The DeJarnette Sanatorium in Staunton, Virginia was erected in 1932 and named after its designer, director, and founder, Dr. Joseph DeJarnette. Now, one cannot simply speak about the building itself without the mention of its founder, Dr. DeJarnette. Dr. DeJarnette's primary legacies were the DeJarnette Sanatorium itself, his staunch advocacy of eugenics, and state-forced sterilization. As a show of Dr. DeJarnette's passion for eugenics, he lobbied Virginia's legislative body, the General Assembly, for 16 years to pass the Sterilization Act, best known as the Racial Purity Act of 1924. The law was challenged by Carrie Buck in the U.S. Supreme Court case Buck v. Bell in 1928. The U.S. Supreme Court upheld the sterilization law after hearing supporting testimony from Dr. Joseph DeJarnette. The Buck case also delivered the infamous quote from Chief Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, Jr., where he said, "3 generations of imbeciles are enough," which also demonstrates the level of supports eugenics had back in 1928. However, nearly 40 years later, the Supreme Court did overturn the Racial Purity Act in the Loving v. Virginia case in 1967. As a continued demonstration of his passion for the eugenics movement, Dr. DeJarnette often wrote poetry supporting forced sterilization, which is illustrated in his most infamous poem, Mendel's Law, A Plea for a Better Human Race, which is shown here. To summarize the poem, Dr. DeJarnette makes the argument that human beings will take necessary action to improve crops and livestock, but will not do anything to improve the genetic strains of the human race through the means of forced sterilization. The poem ends in Dr. DeJarnette's demand that we must sterilize those who are unfit for procreation. Dr. DeJarnette also experimented with different methods of forced sterilization, such as using X-ray technology, which was being explored at the time, and implemented in several sterilizations as a way that was considered to be more efficient than surgical vasectomies and tubular extractions. As mentioned previously, in 1932, Dr. DeJarnette opened the DeJarnette Sanatorium while he was the director of the Western Lunatic Asylum, now known as Western State Hospital. DeJarnette Sanatorium was a 171-bed facility with approximately 120 staff members in its heyday. The hospital cared for those considered insane and or mentally disabled. In the 1940s, as forced sterilization lost popularity in society, Dr. DeJarnette became heavily criticized and was accused of causing Western states decrepit conditions. Dr. DeJarnette resigned as director of the Western Lunatic Asylum, but retained control of the DeJarnette Sanatorium until his retirement in 1947. In 1975, the Virginia General Assembly purchased the DeJarnette Sanatorium and turned it into a hospital for children with severe mental and emotional disorders. The Assembly remerged the sanatorium with the Western State Hospital and renamed the facilities the DeJarnette Center for Human Development, which was a state-run mental health care operation. The operation did not end in success. In 1996, the Virginia General Assembly closed the DeJarnette building, or what was known as the DeJarnette Sanatorium. The buildings on the grounds were essentially abandoned. There's still a lot of debris, patient files left inside the building, furniture, things of that nature. A lot of graffiti, too, and vandalization. In 2003, the Frontier Culture Museum purchased the DeJarnette Sanatorium in hopes to tear down the sanatorium and convert the land into a strip mall and visitor center for the Frontier Museum. Unfortunately, there was no commercial interest in that particular piece of property, so construction deals fell through in 2004. There have been several resparks of debates of what to do about the property since then. For example, it was rumored that the buildings were to be torn down in 2009 to execute the museum's plans, but this did not happen due to economic concerns. Today, the buildings stand as an eerie monument, or sort of an eerie reminder of the eugenics policies and forced sterilizations of the time. Local folklore charges that the DeJarnette Sanatorium is haunted by those who committed suicide while being treated there, or those who were brutally butchered and killed during the sterilization process. However, sterilizations were practiced as safely as possible. at the sanatorium, and the sanatorium did not really bear a reputation of being a butcher shop at the time. Ironically, however, when Dr. DeJarnette opened the facility in 1932, he practiced progressive psychiatry and eliminated bonds and restraints in locked cell doors. He allowed his patients the freedom of movement to walk the grounds under supervision, and allowed for the freedom of movement around the grounds and the hospital itself. This was unheard of during those times, which is kind of ironic that he would practice something like forced sterilization. Thus is the irony of the whole DeJarnette Sanatorium. So if you're ever in Virginia, feel free to stop by and take a look. This is the side view of DeJarnette. It's good to see that they have not torn it down yet.